morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Talk. We are your hosts, Southborough Youth and Family Services. My name is Sarah Castle. I am the Director of Southborough Youth and Family. And with me this morning, we have Megan Island, who's our Assistant Director. Good morning, Megan.
Morning.
We have Shannon Knyman, who's our Program Coordinator. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Sarah.
And we have Lisa Avery Peck back with us today, who is a graduate counseling psychology intern from Framingham State University with us this morning. Welcome back, Lisa. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Let's start with our toast. What does everybody have for a mug today? Mother of cats. Oh, Lisa, look at yours. That's so cute.
Oh, so cute.
Yeah,
It's like a piece of art.
nice little face.
Yeah, that's cute. So how's everybody doing this morning?
Hanging in there.
Hanging in there. That's
Hanging
good.
in there.
I was trying to think of if I had any funny stories to tell, and I really don't. My kids haven't been funny lately. I'm gonna have to work on that.
Get rid of them.
Yeah. You're fired. Well, we do have a lot to talk about this morning, so maybe it's fitting that we kind of just jump right into our conversation about positivity. So we want to be clear that before we start to make a distinction here, that when we're talking about positivity, it does not equate to happiness. We're not saying in today's episode that we are encouraging you to be happy all the time. In fact, to the contrary, difficult emotions such as sadness, anger, shame, all of those things are very valid feelings. And in particular, we're experiencing a lot of them right now. And so what we mean to say when we're talking about positivity is that you can have both. You can have these very valid feelings, these struggles, and experience them, and at the same time, find ways to increase your positivity lens. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why that's important or why that can benefit you. And again, the end goal is not to increase positivity to necessarily be happy about everything, but just to, there are benefits that we will talk about that will help increase your enjoyment in life, despite these challenges. So I think that's all I had to say for now. Maybe it would make sense. Oh, go ahead, Shannon. What were you doing?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I'd love to hear more about the topic.
Sure. Well, so I think we've said it on the show a number of times now. You'll notice I said something about difficult emotions versus negative emotions. We hate to label emotions as negative. They all have their place. And in fact, they are part of our biology, part of our DNA to have stress responses and to have difficult emotions. So again, the goal is not to be happy 100% of the time, but we need to take our difficult emotions such as sadness or anger or shame and try to learn from them and sort of recognize them as part of our biology and teaching us something about ourselves. So stress is a human response that we have. And Megan and I often like to refer back to, and I can never, McGonagall. What is her first name?
Kelly.
Kelly
McGonagall.
Kelly McGonagall. In fact, I think I've promised to post this a number of times, but The Upside of Stress is a very helpful, it's a book, but she also does a TED Talk. But she talks about how stress responses are actually really important for survival. And they're also really important for helping us reach our goals. So if you took, for example, I like to use the example of with kids especially. If you were, we lost Shannon.
Yeah, we lost Shannon.
Shannon, she's stressed out about this topic. I like to use the example of, if you were hiking in the woods and you came across a bear, and the emotion you're probably going to have is fear, right? Or anxiety. And without that, you wouldn't necessarily have the best outcome, right? You might be like, hey bear, how's it going? Can I pet you? So fear is an important response. Stress also is an important response, because it helps us with our performance. It helps us with, it tells us what things are really important to us. And so we have to listen to ourselves and tune into those. So I wanted to start there as part of this conversation to reframe the way that we think about difficult emotions. We're not calling them negative because they have a role that they play. But in doing so, in thinking about difficult emotions in a different way, it's actually a form of positive psychology, to be reframing the way that we look at our human experiences. So, Lisa, can you tell us a little bit more about what is positive psychology?
Sure. So it's an approach to viewing our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors by focusing on our strengths instead of our weaknesses. And it focuses on, how we can build better lives instead of always focusing on, repairing the things that are wrong with our lives. And it focuses on things like positive experiences or events that we've had, as well as positive states and traits, the feelings that are associated with those experiences, like gratitude, resilience, compassion, and optimism. And as a field, it spends a lot of its work thinking about topics like character strengths, like what is each person's unique character strengths, optimism and life satisfaction, things like happiness and well-being, gratitude and compassion, including compassion for ourselves, not just compassion for other people, as well as things like self-esteem and self-confidence and hope.
Right. So this is pretty familiar. I mean, I love this concept as someone who provides mental health support for people. If you haven't had experience with mental health counseling before, it might kind of be a no-brainer. But the unfortunate thing, I think, historically with addressing mental health is to try to repair things that have gone wrong, or to try to sort of adjust something. I don't want to say fix, but make adjustments to habits that have not played out well, which this is very different from that, in that you're really trying to hone in on what the person's strengths are and build upon those, and then also find a new lens to look through, which is hard. So Megan, I know you have more to say about that lens a little bit, and why. So I'm going to ask you the question about why positive psychology is important, and how might we benefit from it?
Sure, yeah. So I'll start by saying one of the reasons that it's important is because there's some neuroscience behind this tendency to think negatively. So our emotion circuits in our brain are more easily activated by the negative. So essentially, we are wired to notice the negative more. So the average person needs a high ratio of positive experiences to just outweigh the negative experiences. And so this lens of looking at the positives, finding the strengths really can help create that balance to kind of outweigh the negatives that we're talking about. So the idea of positive psychology and bringing that, welcome back, Shannon.
We missed you.
So the idea of positive psychology can really just encourage someone to use that lens on a regular basis. And like later on, we're going to talk about some strategies that will help you get into the practice of using that lens. But I think it's important to highlight that there is a biological reason that this does happen, that we just naturally kind of tend to focus on the negative. And so having intentional practices in our lives is really important to kind of just try to counterbalance that natural tendency that we have.
So as humans, we're predisposed to looking for negative. They stick with us much more so than positives. And so you're suggesting that we need to, counterbalance that by actively looking for positive.
Right.
Much, and what did you say? The average person needs a much higher ratio.
Yeah, there are studies that show it's actually for the average person, they need 3 to 1. So like 3 positive experiences or events for every 1 negative. And so that's the average person. So that's not talking about someone who might be experiencing depression or someone who just might have an even greater tendency to experience negatives. And so we just experience negative things more deeply and more personally. And that's just, it's how our brains work. It's how we're wired. Yeah.
And then there's, I think human behavior is often on top of that biology that we're our foundation is built on, that we tend to look for things to affirm our beliefs. And so if we're thinking negatively, we're going to be looking in the environment for things to go, yep, see, it is, whatever the thought is. So we have to really work hard to sort of counterbalance that.
Yeah.
So Shannon, we were just asking Megan, you were going to talk about a little bit more about the benefits of positive psychology, I think.
Yeah. So I think another benefit, kind of on that same, what you just said, Sarah, is just shifting your perspective. I think that's another, really one of the biggest benefits of positive psychology, is that it teaches us how important just a small shift in our perspective can be. If you think about, let's say you're driving home and you get stuck at a bunch of red lights. That might be all you notice, but you might not realize that there was no traffic on your way home. So positive psychology can help us notice that you had no traffic on the way home, and that perspective shift can really have an impact if you start noticing all those different things. That can really impact your mood throughout your day if you start to shift your perspective for noticing those positives throughout your day. So I think that's another important point, is the power that a perspective shift can have.
Definitely. I know this is contagious too. I've seen this firsthand in my own family. At times it's really hard to be positive. Like mornings, I really hate mornings because it's got a deadline. We have to be somewhere by a certain time. And of course that means do everything you can to not get to the place on time, Mom. So we're not going to put our shoes on like you asked. But I have noticed that if I dig deep and try to be positive, I see that in my own children, that they in turn are also try to be positive. Doesn't always work, but most of the time it does. And I think too, one of the things in preparation for today that I was reading about was just about, just imagine feeling, again, this isn't meant to take away the importance or devalue the struggles that anybody is going through. Those things are still very real. But imagine if you had a little bit more, if you felt a little bit more resilient, or if you felt a little bit more positive or hopeful. It just makes some of the things that we're dealing with that much easier to deal to get through. So it helps with things like performance, but it also just in general, just in going about your daily lives really can be very helpful.
Sarah, can I give a quick example that just kind of popped into my mind?
Yeah.
In the past, when I commuted to downtown Boston to take the train, there were times when I was coming home and, I would have like less than 7 minutes to get from my office to the train station in Back Bay. And there was just a tremendous difference between the days on which I said to myself in my head, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to make that train. I'm never going to make that train. And the days on which I said, I can get there. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get there. And it's such a small thing and it sounds so silly, but there really is a difference between those two experiences and how you process that moment.
Right. And so
the outcome.
Yeah. I imagine that helped you in that moment. And so that the argument can be made that, like Megan was talking about, we need to do that, incorporate that throughout the day, into our daily lives, all day long if we can, or where we can increase our positivity or, our positive outlook. So maybe that's a good way to sort of transition into some strategies. I know everybody's got some different ideas. Who wants to go first? Lisa, do you want to talk?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first.
Yeah.
So one thing that I love is gratitude journaling. And with gratitude journaling, the idea is that each day you set aside just a few minutes, and you can pick what time of day is good for you to do this. Some people like to do it over their cup of coffee or a cup of tea in the morning. And some people like to do it at the end of the day as they're getting ready to go to sleep at night because it helps them sort of calm down. And just think about 3 good things that happen to them during the day and just jot them down. Doesn't have to be long paragraphs, doesn't have to be elaborate, beautiful sentences, but just jot something down that helps you notice and acknowledge 3 good things that happened during the day. And as Megan was saying before, the more you do this, the more you increase your awareness of all the good things that are happening during the day, even if there have been terrible things that happen during the day or challenging things that happen during the day. It does kind of change your perspective and it makes you appreciate and be able to see the good things that are happening to you. So that's one really nice and effective way of kind of bringing into your life the practice of gratitude that can be very effective.
I've heard so many people talk about gratitude in different ways. I've heard people sit down, we have a tradition at Thanksgiving to have a tablecloth where people write something down. And we were talking earlier about gratitude letters and visits, which I think is I love the idea that this is contagious too, because in expressing your gratitude towards someone else, I think the idea behind the letters and visits is that you choose someone who you want to express your gratitude towards. And it can be a surprise, out of left field. You're just taking the time to do that. But in expressing your gratitude to someone, you're finding more positivity, but also the person who you're expressing that to feels more positivity also, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's so beautiful about that is it has an impact on and changes both the person to whom you express the gratitude, and it also changes you and changes how you feel.
Yep. Yep. Megan, do you want to talk about the strategy that you were telling us about?
So one strategy that is helpful when you're thinking about like a problem or an issue that you're struggling with is, you can call it exception finding. So it's thinking about a time when the problem wasn't there, when you weren't struggling with it, and thinking about what was different, who was there, where were you, when was it? And the reason this can be helpful is because it helps you find strengths. It can also build hope. It reminds you that there was a time when you were successful. There was a time when you weren't struggling with whatever it was that is posing a challenge right now. And it can also, help you figure out, you can build on whatever it was that was working then when you weren't struggling with whatever the issue is, and you can see if there's anything you can kind of recreate or use from that time that you can bring into now with what you're struggling with. So that can be a useful strategy if there's a problem that you've been struggling with.
I like that too, because as we said at the top of the show, it's not about it's working in conjunction with challenging feelings. So in a way, you're kind of using your challenges to learn from and find exceptions to that, or use a different lens to look through.
Yeah, and I like that it reminds the person of their strengths, like you were successful then, you had strengths, there was something working then. Let's figure out what it was. Let's figure out what you were doing then. And again, that's a big part of positive psychology, is strengths building. So that's why I really like that strategy.
Reminds me of Lisa's trip to get on the train, is that she at some point was successful at getting on that train, and she's got to remind herself, I have done this before, I will do it again. I'm gonna make it. That's great. The strategy I was going to share was about positive self-talk, because we've been talking a bit about our environment, but we also, even when we're completely alone, have a tendency to be our own worst critic, and to sort of play these narratives in our head that really are not helpful for ourselves. And so engaging in positive self-talk is really important. Without even meaning to do it, we often engage in self-deprecating talk, which is to say, we put ourselves down, or we doubt ourselves, or, and so right away, that life has enough obstacles as it is. Right away, we've got an obstacle in our own head that we need to overcome. So positive self-talk can be really important in working through that. I love, there's a strategy, Marilyn Sorensen. If you're watching, Marilyn, she put out a book about low self-esteem, and one of them to combat the narratives that we have in our head is to actively be reading positive, not affirmations, but positive self-talk statements. What I loved about the exercise that she talks about in her book is that because if you were to ask a person who's engaging in a lot of negative self-talk, to ask them to come up with some statements can be really hard. You might be one of those people. You might say, I have nothing nice to say about myself, or, I can't see the positive in anything right now. And so we bring in people from that person's family or friends and say, can you please write 3 things down about me that are positive. You know, it might be you have a fantastic sense of humor. I'm always laughing when I'm with you, or you always go out of your way to help people. And so if you can collect positive statements, and these are truth because they come from other people, you can't dispute other people's opinions of you. But you collect these positive statements from other people, you turn them into first person statements. I have a fantastic sense of humor. I always make my friends laugh when we're together, or I go out of my way to help other people. And then you routinely throughout the day are taking out, you literally can, this is my index card. You can take out an index card or have it someplace, you know, where you see it every day. And at the act of reading those things is going to start to incorporate those statements into your thought patterns. I would even take it a step further as to read them aloud on a daily basis, to try to, you know, when you do that, you incorporate them that much more. But that's a really nice way. And it's kind of nice to get these compliments from other people, you know, to hear what they think your strengths are and what your positive contributions are. So I had another one, which was about a self-care vision board, which really appeals to my love of arts and crafts and self-care too. But we don't have time to go over that. Maybe we can just post that one as a comment. But there's so many different positive psychology strategies that you can use to incorporate into your day and help you, again, not advocating that you find happiness in everything, but just try to shift your lens to make life a little lighter at times. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? Shannon, we're sorry we lost you. We're glad you're back. Darn internet.
No.
Well, next week, we're hoping to be talking with Lori Ratulis, who is a mental health clinician that works at an organization called Soul Friends Incorporated. What's fun and unique about Lori is that she is an animal-assisted therapist. I had a lovely conversation with her yesterday and heard more about the work she does, and it's so much more than I imagined. And here we've got a bunch of animal lovers among us who were excited to just be talking about animals because we find, you know, I think for all of us, they bring us a sense of therapy and happiness. But so interesting what they do in session with animals and how animals can really help children or people who have experienced a lot of trauma or difficult experiences. So we hope to bring Lori on next week to talk to us more about animal-assisted therapy and just about animal-assisted therapy in general, because, you know, maybe somebody at home is looking for a different type of assistance for themselves or for their loved one. So we hope you will join us next week to learn more about that. Thanks so much for coming, everybody.